I'm joined now by the co-host of Pod Save America, Tommy Vietor. Tommy, we have some major news as far as the feud between Gavin Newsom and the state of California and Trump and his administration are concerned. The New York Times just posted an article explaining how the Trump administration is asking colleges to sign a compact to get funding preference. So basically, they have to pledge loyalty to Trump's agenda to be able to access research funding. And so Newsom had come out recognizing that we've seen this before. We've seen it with law firms, with other universities, with tech CEOs, with media outlets. Newsom had come out and tweeted, if any California university signs this radical agreement, they'll lose billions in state funding, including Cal grants, instantly. California will not bankroll schools that sell out their students, professors, researchers, and surrender academic freedom. Talk to me a little bit about whether we are seeing a sea change here in terms of how Democrats, specifically Gavin Newsom here, are recognizing that they should fight fire with fire.
I don't know about all Democrats, but Gavin Newsom certainly is. He's like, okay, you want to redistrict Texas? We're going to do it in California. You want to mess with schools all over the country? Well, we're going to punch back here in California. And maybe that is because Gavin is more pugilistic than some of the other elected officials.
Yeah.
Maybe it's because California is like the fifth biggest economy in the world, and he's got a lot of actual power here. But
right.
I like it because, as you mentioned, when ABC News caved, that didn't stop Trump from going after Jimmy Kimmel and celebrating when his FCC chairman tried to get him kicked off the air permanently. And now Trump's threatening a lawsuit over, this dust up over Kimmel and comments he made about Charlie Kirk. So it's clear that when you give an inch to Donald Trump, he will try to take a mile.
Right.
So you got to throw a punch back.
So if we're seeing the extent to which Newsom is getting positive coverage from this, if we're seeing the extent to which his approval ratings are rising, if we're seeing the extent to which the polls show him as a 2028 contender getting more and more likely, then why aren't other Democrats recognizing the example that he's setting and following along? You just mentioned that California responded to Texas's mid-cycle map redraw with their own. We haven't seen any other states do that. We haven't seen it happen from Illinois, from Maryland, from New York, New Jersey, Colorado, Oregon, Washington. We have other weapons in our arsenal, but nobody is using them. Now we've seen Trump go after these universities all across the country. He's been doing it for months, and yet Newsom in California are the only state that's actually fighting back.
Yeah, I think we got some bad news about redistricting in Utah this week too, right? So the trajectory has not been great in terms of the odds of winning back the House in 2026. I do think, look, you're starting to see some Democrats try to fight back. The government is currently shut down because Schumer and Senate Democrats decided to pick a fight and said, look, you have to extend these ACA subsidies so that people's health care doesn't go up, or else we're not going to fund the government. We'll see how this fight plays out. I think you're right, though, that Governor Newsom is proven to be the one most adept at waging this kind of political war.
But if other governors see the extent to which it's working, these are all political animals, right? Everybody here, what do they say about senators? That every senator looks at themselves in the mirror and sees the president? Yep. So these people all see the tack that's working here. They see the media environment that we're in. And so why not take this as some positive reinforcement and recognize, I don't even have to be the first one to do it. I don't even have to step out onto a limb here. Newsom did it for us, and look at the reaction that he's getting.
Yeah, part of it's a lack of fear in Newsom's part. Part of it is maybe they just did a better job thinking and preparing for these kind of eventualities. Because it just does seem like they've been not only willing and able to punch back hard, but they have a plan in place. They have a strategy that's ready to go, whereas a lot of other elected officials have just been kind of flailing for the last 9 months.
Right. If they could even bring themselves to punch back, then you have to actually follow up your words with actions.
Yep.
And so, it's difficult enough to get these people to actually say the right thing or to have some posture where they're forward-leaning and aggressive and willing to show some fight. But then if they get called on their bluff, they got to be willing to do it. And for so long, we see a lot of these Democratic, governors, senators, members of Congress who aren't willing to actually put their actions behind their words.
Yeah. Look, hopefully this government shutdown fight goes well for Democrats, and we'll see a little more momentum behind fighting.
So on that point of the government shutdown, Right now, the main issue, and I want to reiterate this, and I know that people who have watched my channel and listened to my podcast know what I'm about to say, but the reality is the more we can repeat it, the better off we'll be, and that is that the Republicans have shut down the government right now. Let's not forget that they control the House, the Senate, and the White House. If they wanted to reopen the government, they could. The only red line that Democrats have pointed to, the only way that we're using our leverage is to continue the subsidies for the Affordable Care Act that already exist, because without those subsidies, as we head into 2026, people's healthcare costs are going to rise double or triple from where they are right now. And so this is not just going to impact Democratic states, it's going to impact Republican states. According to the Kaiser Family Foundation, the 5 top states that have seen the biggest increases in ACA enrollment are all states that voted for Donald Trump, and they include states like Texas, like West Virginia, like Tennessee. And so everyone is going to be hit by this failure to continue the ACA subsidies that already exist. And so Democrats are saying, look, you need some of our votes to reopen the government, and so all we want is a continuation of those existing subsidies. Republicans are saying the Democrats want to fund healthcare for illegal aliens. And the reality is there is not a single dime of federal funding that goes toward undocumented immigrants. If you look at healthcare.gov's own website, this is a website that's run by the Trump administration, they concede on that website that undocumented immigrants are not eligible for healthcare on the marketplace. And so that argument is pretty easy to understand. And it's also something that's going to impact all Americans. Everybody understands the very simple concept of what happens when your healthcare gets more expensive. And so now we've seen some of these Republicans start to flail, and they get into the space where they're beginning to try and explain away their logic. And in politics, when you're explaining, you're losing. And so I'm going to put a tweet right up here on this screen from J.D. Vance, and I'm just going to read the first couple sentences. This is important. Money is fungible, and it's why the Democrat and media lie that healthcare is not going to illegals is so preposterous. Consider, for instance, 2 states' Medicaid programs, Ohio and New York. New York gives Medicaid to illegals, and Ohio doesn't. When the government gives billions of dollars to New York for Medicaid, that frees up state money in New York that can then be spent on illegals. So when we say that no federal funds are going to undocumented immigrants, they're saying, well, all money is fungible, so any money that goes into any of these states via federal funding for anything can ultimately be used for undocumented immigrants getting health care, which seems like a really roundabout way of trying to make this argument, really in the depths of trying to, like when you start a tweet that says money is fungible, I don't really know that you're winning the messaging war. So I'm curious to your response to this.
And you paused before it got even dumber. He says, it's like if you give a mobster $100, but he promises you he won't spend the money to buy a gun and commit a crime. But then he takes the $100 and he buys food, and then takes the money he would have spent on food and buys a gun. And it's like, okay, buddy, like what?
This is what money is fungible means. I just don't know that this is the bumper sticker message that they were going for.
So a few thoughts here, JD. First of all, the state and federal governments are not criminal enterprises. I think this sort of
some government enterprises.
Well, right, yeah, the current Trump administration. But this sort of a broad brush comparison, I think, ignores some details. This ignores like legal restrictions, budgetary controls, accounting practices that govern the way tax dollars are spent. Also, again, state and federal programs, they're not criminal enterprises. Like funds that are earmarked for Medicaid have to be used in accordance with federal law. You don't just free them up to do whatever you want with them.
But he's saying that those dollar bills look the same as these dollar
They're
bills.
all green.
So how do you really tell which dollar bills, unless you're following the serial numbers, are going from one to another?
It's just like, look, this money cannot legally be used to cover undocumented immigrants.
Period.
I guess the scenario they're getting at is that if someone is undocumented and they come into an emergency room with a life-threatening illness, the doctors treat them. Right. That is current law because of a law passed during the Reagan administration.
Right, in 1986.
Frankly, it's the only morally acceptable thing
Correct.
to do. We're going to let people die?
If somebody walks into an emergency room with a gunshot in their chest, is the first question going to be, hold on, let me see your papers?
Yeah, where's your green card? Like, what are we talking about here?
Both of my parents were healthcare workers. My dad worked in the emergency room. The notion that he wouldn't treat somebody because of their legal status when they're bleeding out or dying is so backwards. And the fact that it's coming to us from the pro-life party just really gives the whole game away. They're showing their entire ass here.
Like this, just people who think like that, like that's just not a country you want to live in. Someone's dying. Like we should take care of people who are dying in this country. I don't think that's like a controversial thing to say.
And it looks like the broader effort by these Republicans to try and make this money is fungible argument in response to Democrats just saying, don't let our premiums double or triple in healthcare is not working out well for Republicans. I'm going to also throw on the screen right now a raft of polling from the last few days that show the extent to which this message is not breaking through on behalf of the Republican Party. There was a recent Washington Post poll that showed that Republicans are getting blamed 17 points higher than Democrats. Morning Consult poll showed Republicans are getting blamed 13 points higher than Democrats. New York Times shows 7 points higher than Democrats. The Marist poll shows that Republicans are getting blamed 11 points higher than Democrats. So we can see in poll after poll after poll that the party that's taking the brunt of the blame for this thing is the Republicans. Does that surprise you?
It doesn't. Look, the polling
other than the Democrats' historical inability to actually message anything, that might be a little surprising.
Yeah, that part's tough. Yeah, I mean, look, I the polling so far has been better than I expected. The Washington Post, they did this like big online poll where they could kind of get back some more specifics in the responses from people, and they would say things like, "Yeah, I blame the Republicans because they control everything right now." Right. So, like, I don't know,
which is correct.
How are the Democrats at fault for this? You know, over time that can evolve and change, and I think people just sort of like get grumpy that the government's not open, that it's not working, that we look stupid and feckless. So, God knows how this will end, but hopefully that kind of early good data, kind of stiffens the spine of wavering Democrats who might decide like, okay, this is going on too long.
I know that this is not a prediction show, but what do you presume is going to happen here if the Republicans decide not to relent because Trump is just having too much fun trafficking in allowing Project 2025 to that agenda to carry out without any oversight from Congress because the government shut down?
I mean, that's my big fear, which is that Trump thinks he can win the messaging war. He thinks he can blame Democrats and make us pay a price. And meanwhile, like Russ Vought, his OMB director, is just rampaging through the government.
Right. I mean, it's not even necessarily about winning the messaging war because nothing here is popular. Saying that you're gonna make sure that healthcare premiums rise 2 to 3 times higher than they were right now is not popular. Cutting Medicaid from 17 million Americans is not popular. Yep. Most of their agenda is not popular, but he doesn't seem to be too. This is a party that doesn't even seem very interested in the fact that there is an election coming up because nothing they're doing is kind of adhering to popular support. The really what they've been looking for is any excuse to be able to just undermine democracy at every turn. That's what Russ Vought is doing.
Yeah, they're just usurping power. And then the broader problem for Democrats is like, what's the point of getting in a protracted negotiation with the Republicans over budgeting and spending levels and whatnot when the White House will then just go through this thing called the rescissions process and just claw back money ad hoc against the will of Congress, right? So it's like either way we lose in some sense because we just can't trust anything Trump will do because they've proven they will just do things that are illegal or kind of completely outside the normal bounds of how Congress is supposed to work. And the other Republicans, Speaker Johnson or John Thune, who like most people have never heard of, will never say a word to criticize them or defend the institutions that they're ostensibly leading.
Right. So obviously that process is going to continue to play itself out. We will, of course, stay on top of all of this. But before we go, Tommy, I wanted to talk about one international issue while I've got you, and that is that Donald Trump has struck up some NATO-esque deal where Qatar is now guaranteed Article 5 protection. So if Qatar is attacked, then in the same way that a NATO country is attacked, Article 5 says that if you attack one, you attack all. And so he's basically promising American troops in the event a security guarantee in the event that Qatar has some security issue. Can I have your general response to that? And is this what was promised when we were told that Donald Trump would be an America First president?
This is batshit crazy. I mean, first of all, like, you can't just pass a treaty that requires us to go to war through an executive order. That kind of thing should go through Congress.
Yeah.
That's nuts. Apparently, we figured out what Qatar got when they gave Donald Trump a $400 million luxury airliner. Apparently, It gets you a NATO security guarantee. Although I was talking to Dan Pfeiffer, and he reminded me that on top of that $400 million plane, there's also all kinds of like real estate deals, golf course deals, other funds that have been steered into the pockets of Trump, his family, and the people around him. But like, this is nuts. Like, America First is not defending Qatar's, sovereignty in the event of an attack by Iran. And by the way, the Israelis bombed in Doha, in the capital of Qatar, last month. Does that mean under this plan that we would currently be at war with Israel? Like, what the hell are we talking about here? This is fucking insane.
Yeah. And Tommy, this is on top of the fact that we've already seen that Donald Trump has also promised Argentina a $20 billion bailout. And this is at the same time that Argentina has struck a side deal with China to buy soybeans. And so American farmers were cut out of this deal. American soybean sales to China have gone down to zero. It's Argentina's farmers that have now sold their soybeans to China. And in retaliation for that, Trump is bailing out Argentina to the tune of $20 billion while our farmers are at home watching their futures get decimated because when supply chains change, they often don't go back to where they were before. No. We saw after Trump's first trade war in 2017 where South American farmers had picked up a lot of the business that was led off by these American farmers because of these tariffs. That business has not come back to the same degree that it was before. Australia's beef market has also surged in recent years as the result of that initial trade war, and we've seen now that Australia is selling much more beef to China than to compensate for what American farmers aren't selling. And so these are two instances where Qatar is benefiting from its personal relationship with Trump, and now because the president of Argentina, Milei,
this guy named Javier Milei, like. The reason that they are apparently going to get a $20 billion bank bailout in Argentina is because Milei is like one of those CPAC guys.
He's a Trump fan.
Brings his chainsaw to these CPAC events and is buddies with Trump. And
he was on stage with Trump and Elon Musk wielding a chainsaw that ultimately went to Elon Musk because he was in favor of these Doge cuts. Yep. And so he's just like a Trump guy.
He's a Trump guy. And also, the United States is currently slapping a giant tariff on Brazil, because Brazil had their own version of January 6th, where the former president, Jair Bolsonaro, tried to stage a coup, and now he's being prosecuted. Trump is mad about that because it makes him feel bad that he's seeing another autocrat who tried to stage a coup get prosecuted in another country. So we slapped tariffs on them. So now the Brazilians are cutting all these deals to sell stuff like soybeans to the Chinese. And again, it's hurting American farmers. Like, America First foreign policy has turned into, it's unrecognizable. It's $20 billion bailouts for the Argentinian banks. It's sending troops to defend Qatar. It's reinvading Afghanistan to take back Bagram Air Base. Another thing Trump floated this week. It's Donald Trump being the governor of this organization that's going to control the Gaza Strip going forward. Like, what is happening here? None of this makes any sense.
Yeah, and behind all of it is a trail of broken promises that Trump made to Americans, that he was going to be so focused on what happens in this country that he invoked the cost of eggs. Like, that's how granular he got when he was spewing his selling his bill of goods to the people who voted for him, that he was focused on the cost of eggs, of groceries, of housing, of rent. All of those things have gotten more expensive, and yet now, despite his promises of being an America First president, he's using that money to send overseas to the very people who are striking deals, cutting American farmers out of the equation.
Yep.
So the whole thing is just completely
Great
backwards.
work, Donnie.
With that said, for everybody who's watching right now, it's very important that we help build up this progressive media ecosystem, especially to get our message out. And it's important in moments like these where, these messaging wars are what determines what the Democrats, what the Republicans do moving forward. And so if you are not yet subscribed to Pod Save America's YouTube channel, please make sure to subscribe. I'm going to put the link right here on the screen and also in the post description of this video. Also subscribe to this channel if you're not yet subscribed yet as well. Completely free, great way to support independent media, great way to build up the ecosystem more broadly. Tommy, appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me.